The fun never stops on Wall Street. More and more people are piling in their cash. Retail investors are following the herd, investing everything they have and piling up leverage as much as possible, critical of everything, suggesting perhaps we have seen too much too fast. In the end, we are looking at central banks desperately trying to devalue the currencies of the world in order to bring in a new monetary system. Without a crisis, it's difficult to make major changes. So, when the technocrats decide, a major shift will occur and the impact will be felt all over the world. You came here for the truth, so let me unveil that for you. I've got an interesting video today. We are going to talk about the Big Short 2.0. It's going to require some homework on your part, and then we're going to look at what's happening in the economy. I've got issues to talk about in the markets as well. This is going to be jam-packed. Let's go. This article is out of Esquire, and I'm telling you right now, it was very well written. The way that they did it made it very interesting. It tells you a lot of information, gives you some numbers, gives you some insight, and it reflects back on what we saw during the housing crisis. If anybody read any books or saw some movies about what happened during that time frame, you would know how serious it was, how unbelievably exposed and fragile the system really is. Most people, they don't really care. They don't want to know about it. As long as they're not investing in subprime mortgages, they feel that they're all good. But you got to understand what's happening today. And as it relates to this article specifically, I'm just going to touch on a couple points. But I would highly recommend that you read this article if you have any interest in the commercial mortgage-backed securities and what's happening on Wall Street. The $2 billion mall rats. The inside story of a black sheep hedge fund, their massive bet that shopping malls would crash, and how they proved Wall Street wrong. Okay, there's a lot in there, and it just covers everything that they did and their story and everything that happened along with it. Essentially, they went in betting that the malls would go under. They're walking through the malls, nobody's there, they can't find employees, they can't see anybody around, no customers, that's for sure. Everything is dilapidated, and even in fact, they were changing some of the stores, the vacant areas, to have tables in it and calling like a community area so that it wouldn't necessarily be vacant. So they were trying to get around that, and I thought that was interesting as well. So who knows what's happening? We'll talk more about vacancy in a minute, but I just wanted to show you what's happening here in this specific case. Just some info for those who are unaware. Shopping mall landlords are just like your average homeowner. They need mortgages. Much of their mortgage debt has been packaged together by big banks with other commercial real estate mortgages, hotels, office building, etc., into securities that are actively bought and sold on Wall Street through the $1.4 trillion commercial mortgage-backed securities, or CMBS market. Now you got to understand, this market here, it's big, it's massive, and it covers a lot. However, we're talking about big numbers, and that's why I always bring it up, because even if a small percentage of these start to go under, you do have big problems that ripples through the rest of that financial system. These securities bundle dozens of loans into one convenient investment while offloading risk for the lender, a place where you can park your money and theoretically receive a steady return as the underlying debt is repaid. It's kind of like buying a government bond, but instead of the US Treasury paying back, it's the landlords who own the commercial real estate. I just wanted to give people an overview of what's happening here. Essentially, everyone was telling them you're getting in too early, but it looked like that really wasn't the case, because some of these malls had begun to fail, and they really went head first once Sears was starting to go bankrupt and they were starting to restructure and all that. I just think it's interesting because we are seeing this actively taking place on a daily basis, yet most of the news won't cover it, because that's not what they want to do. They want to tell you, you see these articles on CNBC and all the rest saying, if you invested $1,000 in Amazon, 20 years ago, this is what it would be worth today. So people see their money and they think to themselves, wow, I could have been here. So you know what? I'm going to buy in. I'm going to buy in because that's going to happen again. Or I'm going to buy into Beyond Meat because because that's going to be the same situation. It's going to do that too. Or I'm going to buy into Snowflake. I'm going to buy into whatever the heck else kind of unicorn company comes out, and they're going to be so successful. It's going to be fantastic, and it's never going to end badly. Look, there are problems underlying this financial system. I can't tell you which stocks you got to choose. I can't tell you which ones to buy up. That's going to be the next Amazon and so on. You can decide that for yourself. But what I can do is highlight the risks and the fragility that is in the system today that I think is so important for people to understand and then make those decisions on their own so that they are empowered and say, you know what? No, I want to take that risk. I want to put my money in this. And I think that I am in a good position. And that's it. That's all I want to do here with this channel, is to highlight those risks, because often you will not find that anywhere. And that's really what I'm coming here for. Just more of the same here. I mean, we're looking at the issue of 2020. Everything is being shut down. You're looking at the really speeding up of what was already going on prior to 2020 anyway. This issue, 2020, cutting foot traffic in New York's top business districts. I had shown this throughout 2019, and you would see that so many of the very, very best spots in New York were vacant. Once thriving, Flatiron, Union Square neighborhoods see storefront vacancies surge from 9% to 36%. It's definitely a shadow of its normal self. And that just gives us an impression that what we are seeing here is probably only going to get worse over time. I was looking at some videos related to Toronto, and you just see boarded up areas for lease. It's all for lease, because if you don't have the walk through traffic, if you don't have people coming in, unfortunately, you just can't operate. There's no loan that you can take that's going to solve that problem. Black Friday in-store sales were down 54.5% year over year, but all Bubble Vision wants to talk about is how online was up 21.5%. Total consumer spend last holiday season was $730 billion. Online was only a little over $100 billion. The 21% increase in online is insignificant. Do you see the difference there? You have to understand what's been going on. The total spend is really down when you see it. Now, of course, there has been different types of spending. People are buying things today that they weren't buying at all last year, whether it's coming in the form of hand sanitizer and masks or different things that just weren't on the radar, weren't needed, weren't being purchased, weren't a concern for so many people. So that is being purchased. That is adding to the economy. But what's going on underlying all of this, where you see shop after shop after shop closing down? If you are able to give some information in the comments, please do. Let me know what your city sounds like, feels like, and is going around right now. Because some people are saying it's terrible, everywhere is closed down, nobody is able to survive, this is the worst thing ever. And then I see other people saying life is so fantastic, I got unicorns coming out of me, and it's rainbows and kittens everywhere. Every furlough is so furry, and it's a kitten. Well, it depends on where you are, that's for sure. You might be in the land of unicorns, or you might not. This article is talking about San Francisco and essentially saying that they cannot afford another shutdown. This individual went and started talking to business owners and, just to summarize, basically saying that this is it. I wake up every day and I don't know how much longer I can do this. I had 60 employees, but now all I have is 6, or now it's only me, and so on. And this just goes on, and I'm not going to bore you with all the details. But essentially saying that after speaking to so many different shop owners, they have been laying off people, getting rid of people, and it looks really, really grim for so many. The big box stores, however, they can survive. They're allowed to stay open. Revenue might be down in some ways, but their online revenue might have picked up somewhat. And then you have these businesses that are able to get their loans. They're able to borrow at a certain rate that is something that I think we should be highlighting the real differences of. The big companies use debt like Apple, where they're able to profit from it, but the others are taking on debt just to survive. It's a very different story. According to data that were just released by the Federal Reserve, the U.S. money supply in the M2 form has now increased by more than 25% over the past year for the first time on record. This rate of monetary inflation is astonishing. I completely agree with that. And you can see where it spikes upward. That's what we're dealing with today. And it still has increased. You can look at the numbers. It's very clear, and they're trying to devalue the currency intentionally. This was part of a survey that was done, and I only wanted to point to one thing. Look, 82% of people can't afford a $500 emergency expense. That to me is shocking. The majority of those people. Now you could say to yourself, well, 82%, that's too high, or this survey was, asking the wrong people and so on. Okay, maybe it's not 82%. Maybe it's 70%, maybe it's 60%, maybe it's 50%. It doesn't matter what numbers you want to use. I have shown you so many different sets of numbers coming from different surveys for the last few years, and they basically say the same thing. People are living paycheck to paycheck, and they can't afford to have a disruption. And now a major disruption has come for millions of people. 20 million people are getting these unemployment benefits. And what's going to happen if that shuts off? 44 million, or was it 45 million people are on food stamps. What do you think is going on when you have this many people that subsist because of government? Without it, there would be such a serious problem. And of course, as a result, everybody's currency devalues. The more they go into a deficit, the more they increase the debt. And all governments do is encourage more borrowing. More borrowing. Take a look at this, HSBC. You have to understand, this is for Canada. All right? This is real. If you can see that, 0.99% for a mortgage. It's a variable mortgage. It's less than 1%. 0.99%. Now that to me is absolutely ridiculous, but you got to understand what's happening in Toronto, in Vancouver, and in other places. Real estate is the only industry left, and I will say that time and time again. Look at what's happening to the oil industry. Look at what's happening to very few others that are remaining in Canada. My goodness, the service industry, retail, it's all gone. There's no manufacturing, very little. So what do? You put everything onto one. You go all in with your chips. Well, I'm not so sure that's going to be a good idea. Toronto eyes tax on empty homes in bid for real estate revenue. This is all they do. They just tax it. Okay, we need to make more money, so let's tax it. This city alone was making approximately $100 million. I covered this on the channel before. Official documents, $100 million on parking tickets alone. Parking tickets alone, $100 million in a year. And this city is just unable to keep up with the expenses. My goodness, just on the parking tickets, you should be able to fund a large percentage of what they do to keep it operational. But they can't because the money is squandered, because they don't know what they're doing, and that's the only way I can suggest it. Other than that, it's just theft. Really quickly, let's go through these. S&P 500 short interest continues to fall to new lows. Look at what's happening here. Over the past, let's say, year or so, nobody has been shorting. Very few people are interested. I mean, you got to see the percentages in terms of how they are in a relative sense. There wasn't really many who are actually shorting, even during the worst of the crisis, the financial crisis. But now, essentially nobody is, and that's because the Federal Reserve is on the other end. Every fund is buying into these tech stocks. It's unbelievable. Even the ESG, supposedly the environmentally friendly, those who are helping out the environment and the climate because they want to be so wonderful and so furry kitten type of furlough, so unicorn and rainbow, so soft and cuddly, right? This is what they do. This is how they sell it to you. They talk about, selling you recycled products and all this nonsense, right? You get all these companies, and meanwhile, they're like toxic dumping, they're like chopping down the rainforests. You hear about all this stuff, but meanwhile, they've got this pretty smile on their face and everything's so fine on the outside. Anyway, these ESG funds, they're supposed to be doing one thing. That's what they seem. I mean, that's the name, right? But then you look at it on a deeper level and it's absolutely not the case. This just shows you right here, this is coming from Barclays. Our conclusion, ESG funds are not really different from conventional funds in terms of holdings, risk exposure, and therefore performance. Okay? This is what they said. This is the conclusion they came down with. And I think it's important because a lot of these companies are simply buying into the same old stuff. Every company, the hedge funds are doing it, institutional investors, you've got the retail investors, the ESG funds, the central banks, they're all doing it. They're all in the same trade, and that is never a good thing. Last ditch effort to save Brexit trade talks from failure. I need to know from my friends in the UK, what the heck is going on? What's going on? This has been happening for too long. I want to know specifically from anybody out there living in this area, do you know people who are not in favor of a Brexit? Please let me know in the comments below. That's all for this video. If you found it informative, please hit that thumbs up button by clicking a button on your screen. You support the creator of this video. Thank you very much. If you want to learn how to sell stuff online, you are interested in e-commerce, that thing that keeps increasing every year, well, you can learn for free at the AmazonGPS.com. If you want to understand the financial system, the way the central banks work, interest rates, and so on, you can get that at my 2 books, all documented right here, very easy, very simply. Check out the link in the description. If you want the real deal, the download, you got to get this video. Check it out. Click it. I'll see you there.